Hello, hello. Thank you so much for being live again. As you know, my name is Coach Adrian, and I am delighted to be able to come on live with you today. We are trying to do these lives on a regular basis, weekly, in order to be able to answer some of your most pressing questions and to be sure that I provide you with tools that are relevant to what is you're going through, but at the same time that I share key lessons that come up in my coaching sessions with the individuals that I have the privilege of working with on a daily basis. As always, when I do these lives, I love it when you tell me where you're tuning in from, where you live, so that I can get a sense as to who's here. And I would love to also potentially answer your questions at the end of the live. If you put them in the comment box, it'll give me an opportunity to answer your questions at the end. Hello, Donald from Cali. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. So today the topic is going to be a little bit specific. I wanted to talk about writing a letter to an ex, to a significant other, because I understand through coaching that people have mixed opinions about that, or there's a lot of confusion, I should say, about whether this is the worst idea ever or if it can actually be a very good way to move forward in order to rebuild a dialogue and potentially rebuild a new relationship if it makes sense for you. If being back with someone that you love and lost is something that you aspire to achieve. So, hello, world. Welcome. Thank you for being tuned in from Portland. Early morning for you. Hello to Sasaman in Thailand. Late evening for you. Thank you for being with us. And Malaikai from Kenya. Thank you. Means a lot for you to be connected all the way from Africa. So, why do I want to do a video about writing a letter to an ex? It's quite simple. I have seen so many individuals be able to rebuild a new relationship while successfully in that process sending a letter to their significant other to be able to move the process forward. So over the last 6 7 years, this has happened so many times that I lost track, that I could not count. Okay. And I know that having coached a lot of people, oftentimes they tell me, I've followed other advice or I've done other research, and I've been told that it's not a good idea, that it's actually the worst idea ever. So I wanted to explore this in more depth so that you can understand where we are coming from in our philosophy when we talk about writing a letter, and so that you can see if it's perhaps appropriate for you as well. So, um, hello to all of you guys who are joining in from Somalia, Nigeria, Philippines, and Tennessee and South Africa. Africa is well represented today, makes me very happy. So, it is true that in some cases, writing a letter to an ex can be the worst idea ever. I've seen that happen many, many times. But in some cases, it can be the best thing that you ever do. And I want to help you kind of gain clarity in that regard. If you are still very emotional after a painful separation, writing a letter to your significant other is probably not a good idea, because in essence, you're not ready. And the message that you're going to convey to them is basically that they're on a pedestal, that you need them to exist, that you love them very much, and that you're sorry for all the mistakes. And although that may feel good to you to get those things out, it's not really going to help you rebuild a healthy relationship. It's not going to help your significant other see you as an attractive individual and a potential long term partner. because it's not about you and what you want and how you feel at that point. It's about how your significant other perceives you and what they want. That's why the breakup occurs. So if you are still in a very emotional state, writing a letter, in essence, is going to make you look desperate. And your partner, your significant other, your ex, is going to lose attraction for you. And that is true. So before deciding whether to send a letter or not, you need to be able to take a step back, have a sense of self awareness, and recognize where you are in your healing process, right? Are you in the right emotional state to be able to write a letter to your significant other? That is a question that every single person should be asking themselves before doing so. Again, if you're in a state of fear, if you're afraid of losing your significant other, and that is what is driving this action of writing a letter, it's terrible because your significant other will sense that and it will repulse them, it will push them away, right? And many times, the individuals that we're working with are in a state of fear, desperate to be able to rebuild a relationship with someone that they lost, and so afraid of mainly two things. One, that their significant other is going to meet someone else and fall out of love completely. And two, that they're going to forget about you, that your significant other is no longer going to be connected to you. And so they're going to forget about you. And so that fear, in essence, drives you to take steps before you and your partner are ready. And in essence, that fear is then pushing them away. So if you're writing a letter under those dynamics, it is the worst idea ever because, in essence, you're continuing to push them away. And I see that happen, unfortunately, with a lot of people. So, in order to assess again if a letter would bring to a setback, there are certain questions that you can ask yourself. I talked about raising your level of self awareness, right? Which is very difficult to do when you're emotional after a painful breakup. So, number one, ask yourself, am I blocked everywhere? If your significant other blocked you everywhere, you may want to pause before writing a letter. Because if they blocked you everywhere, it may mean that they need space, that they're not ready to engage with you. So if you are blocked everywhere, it doesn't mean that it's a lost cause. There are certain steps that you can undertake. The timing needs to be right, as we will just talk about right after. But if you're blocked everywhere, the idea of writing a letter may lead to a setback. Second of all, when talking about timing, did the breakup just occur? If the breakup just occurred, writing a letter may lead to a setback, not because it's too soon, but because you may not be ready to convey the right type of letter to your significant other. Also, have you already sent a letter recently? Right? This is something that I see happen very often. Someone will send 1, 2 letters, then reach out in a coaching session and say, okay, let's work on a letter together. Well, you've kind of undermined yourself if you're continuously sending these letters to your significant other. So those are some questions amongst many that you should be asking yourself to determine whether it is the worst idea ever to send a letter to an ex. Having said all that, writing a letter to an ex can be the best thing that you ever do. And I'm going to talk about that now because this is something that I've seen happen time and time and time again. And actually, I'm working with a gentleman who just sent me an email that I woke up to this morning telling me that the letter was a big hit. So, why? Why is sending a letter to an ex so powerful? You have to see it not as an isolated thing that you do, but part of a bigger process of rebuilding trust. If you see it in that way, it changes everything. You're no longer you professing your love. That's not the nature of the letter anyway. But it's more about planting a seed to convey to this person that they can trust you, that you're not the same person that they broke up with, that you've evolved. And when you do that, you understand that the letter is not meant to, you send a letter on a Monday or Tuesday, and by the Friday or the Saturday, you're back together. That should not be the approach behind sending the letter. You have to see this as again, planting a seed for long-term success in this overall process of rebuilding a healthy, sustainable, stable relationship. So if the breakup happened on good terms, you guys are still communicating, you may have made some mistakes, but you didn't go into the whole begging and pleading and chasing them and all of those things if you're not blocked, then writing this letter can help you be a way to move things forward, right? To enable you to kind of enter the next step in the communication process. And if the breakup ended badly, the letter can be used as a tool to shift momentum so that you're, in essence, pulling away on your terms or cleaning some things up that may have really, really affected and offended the person that you love. The letter is a tool to safely validate your significant other's feelings and emotions without coming off as needy. It's a way to get them to understand that you now see what they saw and that you've taken action to be able to be a better person. You're not telling them, I want you back. I love you. Please take me back. You're validating how they feel about the breakup. And when you do that, it's very powerful because, in essence, you're shifting the way that they see you and you're shifting the way that they see the relationship or the past relationship or what is possible moving forward. This is an art that we've perfected over many, many years. And again, we know that it works because, in a way, it's a safe way to validate their feelings. Why a letter and not a phone call or a conversation? Because, as you know, when we are communicating with someone, a lot of information is lost because we're thinking about what we want to say, we're perhaps distracted. And when you put things in writing, in essence, you're giving this person an opportunity to read the message on their terms when they're ready and to go back to the message over and over again. So you send a letter today, even if you don't get a reply right away, it doesn't mean that the seed has not been planted. It does not mean that in a few days or in a few weeks, they may not go back to the letter and you'll be able to move forward. A letter is also a very different form of contact than just a text or an email. A text can come off, and both an email as well, can come off as perhaps either too informal or too direct and rigid. Whereas a letter, you have to take time to actually write a letter. When is the last time that you actually hand wrote a letter to someone? It's also different and unique. It shows a certain level of care. It shows that you've put in thought. And that has an impact too when we're talking about rebuilding trust, right? Another reason why we write the letter is because there's an element of surprise there. If you do this, if you approach it the right way, and you haven't just bombarded them with letters, you're going to surprise your significant other, both because of the means, the vehicle by which you're communicating, but also because of the depth of the content in the letter. Because this is a very different type of messaging than they expect to get. When you hear getting a letter from an ex, you immediately think they're trying to change my mind. They're being desperate, they're being stubborn, they're being selfish, they're only thinking about them, not everything that I want. But the type of letter that we're talking about here is exactly the opposite of all of that, because we're validating their feelings and emotions. We're showcasing growth, we're showcasing detachment, and we're opening the door for a new type of dynamic moving forward based on the fact that you have developed new characteristics, traits, attributes, habits, and a deeper level of understanding about what went wrong in the relationship. So this is very different from the type of letter that you may have envisioned or imagined, right? It is a way to convey to your significant other that you've evolved, and thus you're challenging the image that they have of you, the preconceived ideas that they had about the relationship. That is the type of letter that works consistently. At worst, your significant other is happy and they feel understood. At worst, when you write this type of letter successfully. At best, we're planting seeds to rebuild a new and improved relationship. It can only be positive. In certain cases, even though you were broken up with, by writing the right type of letter, you shift the tables, you're pulling away on your terms, and your significant other may actually feel like you broke up with them. I've seen that happen also very often. But of course, you need to know what you're doing. Because, if you don't have the experience writing these types of letters, it's very difficult perhaps to find the right words, the right sequence of ideas. And also, you can come off and have this opposite effect where you're actually coming off as desperate and needy because your emotions are getting the best of you, or because the timing is off based on the reality of your situation. There's a very good question. D says, it's difficult to know when to stop with a letter. When writing, I tend to go on and on and on, especially to my wife. Fantastic question. Thank you, D. That goes back to the level of self-awareness and detachment. If you're writing a letter for you as a way to kind of empty your emotional bucket and to convey some things that you really have on your heart and on your mind, what is the nature of that type of letter? It's a selfish approach and outlook. You're not going to validate their feelings and emotions. Or if you're too emotional, you're going to share way too much. And I go by the philosophy of less is more when it comes to a letter. I've seen this happen, people who send 5 to 10 page letters or even more. Before your significant other even has a chance to read it, you've lost them already. By the sheer size of the thing, you're conveying certain messages to them. So you have to use wisdom and moderation when writing the letter, especially when it comes to the length. Less is more, D. So I really encourage you to think about that. Good question by Raul. What if my ex was never clear as to the reasons why she wanted the breakup? What if I don't know her address? Very good questions. So, number one, even if your significant other was not clear about the reason behind a breakup, if you do the work of personal development, introspection, reflection, you can figure these things out. Giving you an example, if you think about the complaints, the issues that your significant other had, or if you look at the criticism, the things that they used to complain about, you can identify their fears, their insecurities, and with a little bit of coaching, or if you're a self-starter with some time and effort, you can start to put the pieces of the puzzle together and understand exactly what went wrong and why. And I believe that a lot of people that follow our content after a while are capable of doing that somewhat well. Obviously, if you don't know her address, you can't send a letter. And perhaps you're going to have to either get creative to get their address without it becoming weird, or without you coming off as a stalker, or if you can't, it's okay. Then you can send a letter via email. You have to do with your reality, of course, right? So if you don't have the address, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't prevent you from, taking steps to continue to plant seeds of trust, because that's what we're doing. We're planting seeds. Adriana Ramos says, I wrote the letter in January. We both apologized. We were okay. February, he was garnished with child support. Now he's angry and not talking or helping with our kids. So, again, we have to see this as a long-term process. You wrote the letter, circumstances have changed. Right now, he's focused on, this child support and the fact that that he has some commitments and some responsibilities that he needs to kind of take care of. You cannot focus on him. You can't control what he does. You really have to focus on you and what you do and what you can control. Perhaps you need to give him space, let him cool off. And it doesn't mean that your letter has not worked, right? It's a process and it's not linear. Sometimes you feel like things are good, things are going to go back down, but if you can continue to be steady and consistent and to develop the right qualities and attributes throughout this process, you're going to continue to make progress. So don't despair, even though you feel like you may have had a setback in February because the circumstances have changed. Okay, Lore says, I understand that writing a letter in an emotional state isn't the best idea, but what if I've made this huge mistake already? How can I fix it? I was desperate and needy. So, Lore, thank you for your question. It's a wonderful question. It applies to a lot of people. A lot of the individuals that I coach reach out to me after they have made this mistake. And what I've seen throughout my years of experience is that most of the issues, most of the problems when you're trying to rebuild a relationship happens after the actual breakup or separation point. Like those mistakes that happen after the breakup tend to create uh, tend to create a more complicated dynamic to rebuild trust and to rebuild a healthy foundation rather than what happened prior to the breakup. Having said that, most of the issues happen because people try to undo mistakes that they've done. So because they begged and they pleaded, they want to correct that mistake. And so they keep digging further and further and further in themselves into a deeper and deeper hole. If you've made certain mistakes, what's most important is that you learn from them and not repeat them. That's key, right? We cannot undo the past. Not in love, not in life, not in this, material reality in that sense. What is done is done. But we can learn and grow. So don't be needy. Don't focus on trying to undo what you did in that letter. Instead, focus on now conveying detachment and showcasing through your actions that you're not that same person that wrote the letter. So in your case, you have to be really mindful of the timing if you're ever going to send another letter, or perhaps the letter is not the right means for you because of what happened prior. But it doesn't mean that you can't rebuild a healthy foundation. And I've helped clients do that over and over and over again. Okay, Kay says, hi there, planning on writing one to myself and to the person I am in contact with them and mirroring their actions. This is fantastic, Kay. Writing a letter to yourself is good. It forces you to also be clear about your thoughts and where you stand in this process. And I encourage people to write letters to themselves. I encourage people to journal during coaching because it's a good way to assess your progress and to continue to keep yourself accountable. So that's fantastic. And when it comes to writing to them and mirroring their actions, I can only commend you for that. So thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your comment. If this is helpful, please let me know so that we can continue to do these lives. I'm trying to do them every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So fuel my fire, please. Send me a heart, like it, whatever you can do so that I can feel the love back. That would be helpful. It would fuel my fire. So Christoph says, what should I do if my ex cries for me when we meet and hugs me, then a couple of days later she doesn't want me? Sometimes gets closer, then she stops. We sometimes send messages since we break up. So this is very, very common. Hot and cold behavior. Part of your ex is reality is that they miss you and they want to be with you. Perhaps that's their heart, but their mind, their head tells them, be careful, you're going to get hurt. This person hasn't changed, etc., etc., etc. So you want to be consistent and steady, and you want to basically ignore the negative behavior, reward the positive behavior. If you adhere by that approach, generally speaking, you're going to continue to make progress. But this isn't a problem per se. This is normal. They're in an emotional state too. So I'm getting kisses from Greece. Thank you, Sadaki. And Sister Anastasia says, I love your lives. Thank you for the hearts. Kay, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is wonderful. I appreciate you guys very much. I also wanted to put in the comment section that I've actually created a program that helps you write these letters, right? This is a short live, but we've actually created a course to help you write the perfect letter for you. So if you're interested, you can get information there at the link that I just shared, and I can put it in the description of the video as well. So I think we're almost at time. So I don't know if there are maybe another few questions that I can tackle, a couple of questions before I'm going to have to end this one, but I'll be back next Tuesday. And if you have a certain topic that you'd like me to address, don't hesitate. So let me see what I can do here. Clark says, why do I have to write a letter when they did the breaking up? Did I make mistakes? Yes. And I've gone over accountability in person. So that's a good question. Why are you writing a letter if they broke up with you? I like the question because in some ways it shows that you're valuing yourself and that you're recognizing that your significant other also has to work on bettering themselves. They have to earn your trust. They have to apologize. That's true and that's great, right? All that can be true, but it's not a zero-sum game. And empathy and rebuilding trust can only help you in that process. Because what I've seen is that a lot of times when people approach this process of breakup recovery the right way, and they focus on what they can control, in turn, you inspire your significant other to also be their best self. You will model a certain behavior that they can then kind of, look up to and mirror in that sense. So because you're putting your ego aside, you're actually evolving and growing, you're encouraging them to do the same. And it becomes a lot easier for them to do so because you've put your ego aside. And it's no longer this tense conflict type of dynamic. There's no one wrestling with them anymore. And so they also can then, apologize as well. So many times when an accountability letter of this type is sent, the response is overwhelmingly positive, and the other significant other says, it wasn't your fault. Actually, I recognize that I did this, and this wrong too, and I'm so happy that you've been able to evolve. So, Clark, it's not a zero-sum game. Ali says, what about when your ex sends you a letter? How do you let them down easy? I'm not sure I understand the question. If your ex sends you a letter, no matter what it's about, my my advice would be to make sure that you actually internalize what they're trying to convey to you, and that you respond with empathy. Whether you're interested in rebuilding a relationship or not, you have to recognize that it takes a certain level of courage and love to write a letter of this type. So even if you're not interested, you have to acknowledge that letter in some ways. I think that is really the the base, at least the minimum standard, I would say, because I work with a lot of people that are on the other side of the breakup, and I understand that what it takes to write a letter of this kind. Sadoraki, thank you for your kind words, and God bless as well. I appreciate you very much. Okay, and D, thank you as well. The last question will go to Raul. What if my ex likes someone else? Can this help? Yes, it can help. Absolutely. It's a different type of letter again. We're not professing our love and we're not telling them come back. We're telling them, in essence, that true love is selfless love, that you want them to be happy even if it's not with you, that you've grown from this experience, and that you want to, stay in each other's lives in some way. That's the nature of the accountability letter a lot of times. And so even if they're with someone else, you can still plant those seeds to rebuild trust and to show them that, at least to give them something to think about, right? And a lot of times an ex will pretend to like someone to jump into another relationship to heal because they don't think that they can be happy with you. And so by writing this letter, we're showing them that it's not a dichotomy, that they can heal and that they can be happy with you, that one doesn't have to come at the absence of the other. Clark says, doesn't it friend zone you? That will be the last question, Clark. This is also one of the biggest misconceptions that I see in my work. People are so afraid of falling in the friend zone, when in reality, being friends with an ex is actually very difficult. You either, most of the time, fight like cats and dogs, and you're not friends, and you move forward with your lives, or you end up rebuilding a relationship. But being true friends with an ex is actually something that is quite difficult to do. A lot more difficult than you may imagine. And just because you're not using, classic attraction techniques, or falling into false notions of love and masculinity and all of those things, does not mean that you're falling into the friend zone. On the contrary, you're touching their heart and you're increasing your chances of being able to rebuild this healthy relationship. The point is not to just win someone back. The point is to be in a healthy, stable relationship where you can both be happy. Otherwise, what's the point? And the letter can really help to rebuild that healthy foundation. I hope this was helpful to you guys. Thank you, Ali. Thank you to all of you. If you're here and you're listening to this, you're fighting the good fight. And I'm very grateful to be able to be your coach. So I'll be back next Tuesday for another live, and have a beautiful, beautiful day and continue to fight the good fight, my dear friends. Much love, and see you soon.